Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of New Music Finds. After the last few weeks of me having some really epic and mega hauls, I had a 42 CD haul and a 50 CD haul. We are back down to the regular type of CD hauls that I normally have. I've got 15 different albums to run through with you guys that I picked up over this past week, and I'll give you a little bit of background about why I picked them up and why I'm listening to them, maybe turn you on to something new, and or at least just remind you of cool stuff that you've got. We'll get into it here in just a bit, but before we start, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date with really cool things just like this with New Music Finds. So we're finally back to being able to talk about some new releases. And the first one up was a brand new Ringo Star album that came out. And it's been, I think since 2019. So it's been 6 years at this point, just roughly 6 years. But this one here, a little different than the way that his albums have been in the past, because this one here's got him, as you can imagine, with the cowboy hat. It is a country album. Although it's not overtly country, some of the songs do have more of that country flair. And I find that it comes more because of some of the guests that we have on here. Molly Tuttle, Lucius, Billy Strings. They're on a couple different tracks. Larkin Poe. Alison Krauss. To me, they tend to give it more of the country flavor than really Ringo Starr himself. And the songs are co-written with T-Bone Burnett, who I think does an amazing job, who helped put this album together for Ringo Starr. So a little difference, not outside of the territory that Ringo hasn't already explored in the past. He's made country albums before and even explored some of the country sounds with the Beatles on things. But here we have an entire album of him doing it. And I like it. I'm enjoying it. I like everything that Ringo does. He's actually my favorite of the four guys. I think he keeps the variety of what he does interesting, and so I enjoy that aspect. Not that I don't like the others, and I do really like Paul McCartney. But when you get a Paul McCartney album, you know exactly what you're getting, and it's great, don't get me wrong, but I do enjoy the fact of Ringo really mixing things up and trying different things, and so we get that with this one. After doing the 5 EPs that he did, finally returning to the album format for that one. And this one was a real shock because I didn't even know about it until right before it was getting released. Something popped up and let me know that it was happening about a week before, but I hadn't heard anything on this. A brand new Flock of Seagulls album. It's called Some Dreams. It's the backside of it. As far as I know, it's just the front man, whose name is Mike Score. I think I said Mike Stone or something in one of the other times I was talking about him, but I just mix them up with the other names of rockers that I know. But Mike Score, vocals, keyboards, guitars, and bass. And we do have other people on here doing the programming and playing drums and stuff like that. But all in all, it's really his album. But if you liked Flock of Seagulls back in the day, and it's been since 1995, so 30 years since we've had a brand new original album. There's been other re-recordings and orchestrated albums, remix albums, things of that nature. This brand new original music from Flock of Seagulls. And again, I'm really enjoying this one here. It sounds like that sort of stuff. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I would think this was one of the albums from back in the day. A lot of great artists that are returning to their roots and making classic killer albums that sound like the stuff that we love so much. It's just a shame it has taken them so long to get back to that style and do that in the format that us fans love. All right, so as typical, hitting up my local record stores and making some cool scores. If you watched videos earlier this week, then you know about some of the things that are going to come up during this run. But we're going to start off, and I'm going to show you two Axsis albums. It's a German band. If you're not familiar with them, it's Axsis. This is their debut album, Kingdom of the Night. It was actually a little bit difficult to track this down because it's their biggest album. It was biggest selling debut album from a German artist at the time in their native land. But this band still going today, although I think they're wrapping things up. I think one of the albums that I showed you last time is their current 2024 album, but I think they're in like the farewell mode. I think they're doing a farewell tour, and this is the last album, and they're wrapping things up. So they're kind of on their way out, which is really unfortunate that I'm just discovering them now. But debut album, and so I had picked that up, if you remember from last week, where I found one Axsis album, which is simply called 2, from Jack's Music Shop where I was, and took a chance on it, and it turned out to be absolutely stellar. I just fell in love with it. I wasn't too sure when I had streamed it. I even mentioned that at the end of that video, the Let's Go to the Record Store video series. And then for whatever reason, it was just perfect. And now every album that I've gotten, and I think I've picked up about 5, has been really good. And this one, Kingdom of the Night 2, so you can see the XXV, so 25 years on, from the debut in 89 and 2014, they made a second one. And this one, there's actually 2 albums. So this is the white edition, and then there is a black edition of the album, different songs between them. So I have this one right now. I've ordered the black edition. You'll see that one in an upcoming episode. But I just fell in love with this band. It's killer AOR melodic rock with a bit of, well, I won't say, let's do this in reverse. It's power metal with a bit of AOR melodic rock infused into it. So it's very melodic vocal stylings, harmonies, symphonic to a degree, but it is in the power metal vein. But as I described previously with this, it's almost as though it's power metal, but more on the hard rock side of things than power metal on the, say, symphonic or one of the other styles of metal. And I really liked that about it. There's not as much of the double bass kick drum part with this band as there is in typical power metal. So again, if you've never checked them out, I definitely recommend checking out Axsis. All right, Swedish AOR melodic rock, H.E.A.T. I had picked up one of their albums, Freedom Rock. It was the original non-remixed edition of it. And I didn't have anything with Erik Grönwall singing. So I finally decided to pick something up, and that's this album here, Into the Great Unknown. I don't know how many albums Erik Grönwall did with him. He might have done 4. So this is my first one with him singing. I have the first 2 and the latest album that feature the original vocalist, but now adding into it one with Erik Grönwall. And after listening to Erik with Skid Row on The Gang's All Here, I now hear Erik clearly as part of this. In fact, there's a lot of elements of this I heard on the Skid Row album. But at the time when I listened to the Skid Row album and I wanted more, and I listened to this, it didn't do it for me. Probably because the musical styles are so different between the two. You've got AOR melodic rock versus the hard rock, heavy metal, glam metal of Skid Row. This here's sounding musically different, but vocally a lot the same. So that was a lot of fun getting that and getting a little bit more of Erik Grönwall in my catalog. And also Swedish band Torch. So that was another artist that I had picked up, that 33 CD buy from Jack's, Axsis, H.E.A.T, and Torch was one of them. And it was a later day reunion era album that I had gotten. This is another one of those. I think this is the latest one. Reignited is the title of this, and it's got 9 tracks on it. And just really good stuff. I relate it to being of the sound of the new wave of British heavy metal sounding, but obviously being from Sweden, they're not British, they're not really part of that, but it does have that sort of hard rock metal flavor to it, and I tend to like that a lot more than some of the other leanings of metal. All right, just being in power metal and different shred style guitar playing metal sounds that often come along with those sort of things. I was listening to Alcatraz and their newer albums with the new guitar player Joe Stump. And I found out that he has a band called Reign of Terror. And what was even better about this is that Mike Visara, who sang for Obsession, which I bought an album of theirs recently, you guys remember that, and I already had some of that in the catalog. And then also because he had sang for Loudness on 2 albums. So I was really feeling the whole Michael Visara thing. And to find out that Joe Stump had a project with Michael Visara, it was the perfect thing to get and add in. So this one here, Conquer and Defy from 2002 on Leviathan Records. And it's what you'd imagine. It is absolute speed metal shredfest stylings of Joe Stump with some really cool vocals over the top of it that Michael Visara is known for. He's sung for a lot of different projects over the years, but in particular, Loudness, Obsession, and I forget what else. I know he's done some other stuff out there. Oh, he did the Roland Grophaus solo album. That goes back about 2 years for me, but when I bought that and found out that he was the singer of that, I was just as elated. So he's kind of done some of these things that have kind of flown under the radar, and this one is one of them. I've missed it for 23 years, but just discovered it and glad to get it. Okay, so I believe I probably already posted this video, which is artists I never thought I'd listen to, and I focused on Merciful Fate. So I bought my first 2 Merciful Fate albums, the debut Melissa from 83, and then this one here, Don't Break the Oath, 84. It was their first run. They broke up in 84, 85 after that point, and King Diamond goes solo or forms the King Diamond Band. But I finally took a chance and bought these, and I don't know, it was strange. It has taken me 35 years to warm up to the vocal stylings of King Diamond, and I recently did a video with Pete Pardo on Sea of Tranquility and mentioned that I was doing this video and posting it, and he was shocked that out of everything that I listened to, I wouldn't have already been a fan of King Diamond, or sorry, Merciful Fate. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I did make a video trying to break down what it is that changed over the time to get me into that artist and how it is that I'm now in it, whereas I wasn't able to get past so many different things early on. But I'm really enjoying these 2 albums. I haven't yet decided to branch out from here, but we'll have to see. Pete is speaking very highly of the other Merciful Fate albums, so I may be exploring more and more of that. Okay, something I did pick up and show you guys last time was Death Angel Bastard Tracks, and I picked up another Death Angel release. This one here, Humanicide is the title of it, which I found out afterwards. That song actually, I think it was for the song, not for the album itself, but was nominated for a Grammy. I don't think they won. But once I heard the song and fell in love with it and then checked the back of the album to know, and I realized, wow, that is a really great song. It isn't oftentimes that songs that are nominated and or even win, are actually that great compared to other things that run under the radar. But this was a great heavy metal song. So I didn't know that going into it. I found out about it afterwards, reading on Wikipedia while listening to this album. But I've really been enjoying going back and exploring the deeper catalog of Death Angel. I knew them from back in the day, but wasn't really into them. Got into them maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s, and have kind of explored the rebirth of them when they got back together, and followed them for the first couple albums when they reformed. And then I didn't really keep up with them. And so I've only just recently been re-exploring them. And I picked up their latest release, Bastard Tracks, the live album that was recorded during the pandemic. So it's really live in the studio, but a lot of deep cut songs from their albums recorded in one take. But this one here, one of the studio albums and this is from 2022. So latest release, or sorry, I think it's 2022. It says 2019 and 2022 on the back. So I assume it's 2022. But their latest new album of original material, although I hear they're in the studio working on it, a new one. So that'll be exciting when that drops, if that's later this year. Picked up another Brazen Abbott album, Bad Religion. This is a reissue from Frontiers Records. This is the one that a lot of you guys were commenting whether I was picking it up, asking if I was getting the quote new Brazen Abbott. But this is 1997. It's just a reissue of it. I don't even know if it's been remastered. But I took a listen to this, and again, the fascination, at least, with this artist is the lead vocalists that come in and sing, and Joe Lynn Turner is on here, Edmund Gorham, both those guys sing for Yngwie Malmsteen, and I forget who the other gentleman is that sings, but they usually have 3 singers on it, and I'm listening to it for the Joe Lynn Turner stuff more than anything, but this one hit with me more than the previous one that I picked up. I picked up one other one and it was kind of okay, but I like this one a lot better. I was glad to find it. It was actually not in the Brazen Abbott section. It was under Rainbow in a sub-filing of Joe Lynn Turner stuff. And I found it over there after the last time when I was looking for it and bought the other album instead. So I finally found it when I went back to Sound Exchange. And again, previous thing that I was exploring, I picked up a best of Camelot, and I now picked up this album, which I believe is their latest one, 2023 release. And I liked it's a die cut cover, so I thought that was very cool. Thing, if you're going to do cardboard cases, then do something cool like that with it at least. But just wanted to pick up something newer than that best of, because that was, I want to say, like 95 to 2003. It was their initial run on Noise Records. This stuff much later turned out to be just as good. This is post Casey Grillo leaving and joining Queensryche, which, remember, that was what brought my attention to the band. So yeah, I just wanted to explore some more stuff, and I'm finding out I really dig what they are. I don't know that I'm going to run out and fill my entire catalog or void in the catalog with all the stuff that I need. But as I find it, and certainly as I come across it used, I think I'll be grabbing more Camelot albums and getting it into the collection. Okay, one of the other videos, and again, not entirely sure if this is posted, not posted just yet at the time of filming this, but I filled 2 Holy Grail spots in my catalog. The debut EP from H.E.A.T, this is the reissue on Atlantic Records, does still carry the, there we go, Time Coast imprint on it. So it is the remix of the original debut EP that once the band became popular with Out of the Cellar, Atlantic Records remixed the EP and re-released it. In all, this thing apparently has sold about 300,000 copies, which is pretty good for an EP and a debut thing like that. What I really enjoyed about this more than anything is actually the song Back for More. The early version of it is kind of funky sounding. It's got this weird bass line in it that is different than the one that we know from Out of the Cellar. And I always kind of thought or looked at this and said, well, gee, I don't really want another version of that song or an earlier version or just whatever, because I thought it would sound exactly the same. But in fact, very different. And come to find out that I think that Juan Crucier does not play on this. In fact, it was some studio musician or something that played bass on it, which is why it sounds the way that it sounds. But all in all, I was so glad to finally get this, a CD copy of it, and have it in the collection. It was the last thing from H.E.A.T that I didn't own. And then Megadeth, Killing Is My Business, Business Is Good, the original Combat Records edition, which has the original mix of it, the original album art, the original track listing, all those sort of things. Finally have the original version. I've had the 2002 reissue of it that was a remix, and the 2018 reissue of it, which was a different remix, but I never came across the original Combat Records version of it. And again, last thing that I needed for the Megadeth collection. So pretty amazing to get 2 Holy Grail scores in one visit to a record store on the same day. I walked in. This was handed to me by Anthony Coviello at Sound Exchange, knowing that I had been looking for it. And then I went on looking through a metal collection that had just come in and found this in it. And I actually found a few other things in that collection where I'm actually replacing stuff that I already had. But I found Fastway, and I think it's called Waiting for the Night. This one here I have a BGO Records version of it that's not quite as cool. I like the original releases far better, so I wanted to replace that. And this is actually a Waiting for the Roar, not Waiting for the Night. And then two more Megadeth releases. Both of these are the original versions of the album. It is the Capitol Records with the imprint of Combat, but it's not the remix ones that Mustaine did later on. So added those in, but I don't really consider them new things because I've already had versions of that stuff in the catalog, whereas these are new to me. I haven't been able to listen to those. And one last one that I got from this cool metal score that Anthony had brought into the store. Racer X Street Lethal, the debut album, Racer X being the band that features Paul Gilbert. Says so right there on it. Kind of, this obviously means it's a reissue. I'd love to find, if I could find a version of this that doesn't say with Paul Gilbert under it, I'll probably pick that one up, although I don't know if it exists. But yes, guess you'd call it a speed metal band. I mean, it's shred metal, whatever you want to call it. Good stuff though. Jeff Martin, I think, if I'm remembering his name, yeah, is on vocals, who later would drum for Michael Schenker Group, even though he's a vocalist as well. I guess he, tries his hands at either one, whichever he can get the gig as. But he's the vocalist here, and you've got John Alderet on bass, who would go on to play with Scream. So it's kind of a little mini super group. That all the guys would go on to do other things, but when they were doing this, they were just shred metal guys. So I had the second album and I have the later stuff, but I didn't have the debut album, and was very glad to get that into the collection. And there you go. That's 15 new albums that I purchased, not counting those extra 3 that I tacked in for you guys, but 15 new albums. Just some cool stuff that I've been exploring, and hopefully maybe turned you on to something, or like I said, at least reminded you of a cool classic album that you've got in your collection. So let me know what it is that you've picked up recently. What is one of your cool metal, or not metal, but any score, one of your cool new music finds that you've picked up recently? All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.